Good day everyone, especially to you Ma'am Iya. I am Darlene Joy Irumayla and I will be your pre-service teacher for today. And we will be going to discuss another important writing during Heian period, which is the Pillow Book by Sei Shonagon. So before anything else, let us know our learning objectives. First is to identify Sei Shonagon and what motivated her to write the Pillow Book. Next is to analyze the structure and organization of the Pillow Book. And lastly, to appreciate the unique perspective and voice of Sei Shonagon as a female writer in ancient Japan. So now let us proceed to the introduction of this book. The Pillow Book or Makura no Soshi is a book of observations and musings recorded by Sei Shonagon during her time as a court lady to Empress Consort Teshi during the 990s and early 1000s in Heian period Japan. The book was completed in the year 1002. The work is a collection of essays, anecdotes, poems, and descriptive passages that have little connection to one another except for the fact that they are ideas and themes of Shonagon's spurred by moments in her daily life. In it, she included lists of all kinds, personal thoughts, interesting events in court, poetry, and some opinions on her contemporaries. While it is mostly a personal work, Shonagon's writing and poetic skill makes it interesting as a work of literature, and it is valuable as a historical document. Shonagon meant her writing in the Pillow Book for her eyes only, but part of it was accidentally revealed to the court during her time. She inadvertently left it on a cushion she put out for a visiting guest who eagerly carried it off despite her pleas. She wrote the Pillow Book as a private endeavor of enjoyment for herself. It seemed to be a way for her to express her inner thoughts and feelings that she was not allowed to state publicly due to her lower standing position in the court. Though Shonagon never intended her work for eyes other than her own, through the centuries it has become a famous work of literature. So now let us know more about the author of this book. So Sei Shonagon was a Japanese author, poet, and a court lady who served the Empress Teshi around the year 1000 during the Middle Heian period. Sei Shonagon's actual given name is not known. It was the custom among aristocrats in those days to call a court lady by a nickname taken from a court office belonging to her father or husband. Sei derives from her father's family name Keiohara. The native Japanese reading of the first character is Keio, while the Sino Japanese reading is Sei. Her surname is not her actual name but refers to her role, or more likely the role of her husband as a lesser counselor or shonagon. She was married at least twice and was known to have visited certain Buddhist and Shinto sacred sites and temples. So now, come and join me as we will know the summary of this book. So, in sections 1 to 29, she describes the best times of day in each season and unique delights of each month. Sei also discusses various New Year customs including hitting each other with gruel sticks. She includes men's and women's language on her list of things that sound different despite being the same, and notes that commoners use too many words when speaking. Sei describes an occasion when the Empress Teshi moved into a new house and the disheveled gentlewoman who had walked past courtiers and other men. She also narrates a story of Okinamaro, a dog who was beaten and banished to Dog Island after being summoned to scare the emperor's cat away. The dog's human-like emotions marvel Sei. Also, Sei believes that people of standing should allow their daughter to serve in palace positions to expose them to society, and finds women without prospect despicable. She also lists dispiriting things including a dog howling in midday, a scholar who has lots of daughters, an inhospitable host. Others include a man whose lovers fails to visit him, a failed exorcism, and sending someone a good poem and receiving a boring one in reply. Now in sections 30 to 60, Say shares her thoughts on the importance of a handsome prince during a sermon. According to her, a priest giving a sermon ought to be handsome because his teaching hits home most effectively if one is gazing at the priest's face. If one's attention drifts because of the unattractiveness face of the priest, it has the effect of making you feel quite sinful. She describes the behavior of an ex-Chamberlain who attends sermons just to be seen by others. Say also recalls an important set of Salvation Lotus discourses attended by several notable personalities, including the regent at that time, where people exchange poems and messages. Say also discusses the beauty of various trees and their flowers, the naming of ponds, and the seasonal palace festivals. She particularly loves the Fifth Month Festival, where people decorate their houses with sweet flag and vermouth, write elegant letters, and listen to the Hototogeso bird's signature cry. She also mentions various birds and their qualities, and the enduring human-like traits exhibited by some of them. Snow falling on common people's houses or moonlight shining into such houses are insutable things. The same goes for meeting an ox cart led by an auburn-colored ox. Say also finds it repugnant to see a pregnant woman who is visibly aging or an old person eating or a commoner wearing crimson-skirted trousers. Next, in section 61 to 95, Say lists various bridges, villages, and plants that interest her. She likes plants with sacred associations, charming appearances, and interesting names, and finds lotus leaves to be particularly marvelous because they symbolize the teachings of Buddhism, and their seeds can be used to make powerful rosaries. She also observes that some things cannot be compared, such as summer and winter, night and day, and old age and youth. Moreover, she lists various items that are considered splendid things in court culture, such as ornamental swords, Buddhist religious images, and wisteria blossoms. Things of elegant beauty includes pretty girl dressed casually and book on fine paper. The Gosichi festival is particularly delightful, with courtiers singing and dancing. Say writes about a flirtatious encounter between a courtier and a Gosichi dancer. Finally, Say writes about infuriating such as discovering after a hasty sewing job that one has failed to knot the thread to start with. It's frustrating and embarrassing to overhear a confidential conversation one is powerless to ignore, or when one's lover gets drunk and starts spouting secrets. It's also frustrating when someone starts gushing about a horrible child, or when an uneducated person drops famous names, or having to listen to someone recite a bad poetry they've written. It's startling and disconcerting to snap a hair comb, or see an overtuned ox cart, or wait up all night for someone who never comes. Spilling someone is also startling and disconcerting, and regrettable things when it rains instead of snow during certain festivals, or a festival is disrupted by an imperial abstinence, or when a group of ladies drape their beautiful sleeves out the carriage's window during an outing but then doesn't meet anyone who can admire them. Now we have sections 96 to 119. Say is silent during a moonlit evening with Empress Teshi and other ladies, and when asked why, Say responds that she is immersing herself in the spirit of the moonlight. Empress Teshi later asks Say how she would feel if she were not loved above others. Say had earlier declared that she'd rather be looked than to be other than first in someone's heart. Other ladies had jokingly called her Lady Lotus Sutra for this remark. So Say writes back, of the 9 paths to paradise, I would happily take even the lowest. Later on, Say receives a bare plum branch with a note and writes back a response that impresses Empress Teshi. On a snowy day, Say receives a letter from Consultant Kentu and sends a trembling reply, which a courtier suggests should earn her a promotion to High Gentlewoman for that response. She lists some distressing and moving things, including dew in the garden in late autumn and a couple in love who cannot be together. Next, in sections 120 to 159, Say discusses various aspects of social etiquette and moments of embarrassment. She describes her appreciation for the beauty of nature and reflects on a gift she received from Secretary Controller Yokinari. The court ladies discuss ceremonial items and the empress holds religious services after the regent's death. Sei exchanges poems with Yukinari and they discuss guards and barrier gates. Later on, Sei receives an invitation to compose poetry about bamboo, which earns her praise from the privy chamber and the emperor. She discusses occasions when time drags by and worthless things, and then reflects on the provisional festivals and the rehearsal of performance. Now in sections 160 to 186, Say criticizes the depressingly staid and unambitious lives of those with fifth ranking titles. On the other hand, it's boringly unromantic when a lady cleans up her property and keeps it running in punctilious fashion. She recounts a story about a charming gentleman trying to impress a lady. Say remembers an emperor asking Lady Chamberlain Heyo to compose a poem about snow, which she does. Say recalls feeling overwhelmed when she entered Empress Tashi's service, but soon learns that everyone feels the same. Also, Say describes people who feel smug include the one who's first to sneeze at the New Year, though Say specifies that only commoners follow this superstition, not people of quality. Others include new appointees to enviable government posts or a son-in-law who's been selected from among many suitors. She considered the splendor of high rank and how it's more impressive when an average girl becomes the wife of a court noble or empress. Also, Say discusses the role of an imperial nurse's husband and the problem that comes with it. She enjoys watching a ladies' man writing a letter to a lover. Say finds it enchanting to overhear someone reciting poetry on a moonlit night, but annoying when it turns out to be a boring person. She finds it embarrassing when someone uses vulgar words or impressions like I'm gonna. Sections 187 to 259 say describes the beauty of fins, elegant incense blends, and various festivals such as Provisional Camu Festival and the return of the Camu High Priestess. She also expresses her annoyance at poorly dressed people attending important events and how she enjoys overhearing things at night. Additionally, she mentions her curiosity when seeing people carrying packages and letters and how their appearance and behavior reflect their character. Say recounts receiving a letter from the Empress written on red-tinted Chinese paper and her response on a violet lotus petal. Say follows this anecdote with list posting stations and shrines and shares a legend associated with the Aritoshi shrine. Say then lists the names of various natural elements such as hills, sun, moon, and clouds. And also Say reflects on her opinion of gossips and the things that brings her pleasure, including discovering new literature. It also pleasing when one hears people talking about a poem or story one doesn't know, and then one comes across it later once reading. Additionally, it's satisfying to get the better of an overconfident person, especially a man. Now in sections 260 to 297, in these sections, Say continues to reflect on the behavior of men and her preference for a poetic setting. She imagines a lover who always sends a next morning poem but neglects to do so after a quarrel. But after a day of heavy rain, one receives a message, a single poetic allusion, the rising floods of rain, and one is delighted. And she finds it charming when a lady receives a letter in a dark room and is too impatient to light a lamp, so she reads by the glow of a piece of coal. Say also discusses the contrast between men and women and perilous situations, such as boat crossing and diving for shells. She recounts a humorous incident in which a man tells a comically elaborate tale of his house burning down, prompting laughter from her companion. And finally, Say shares some other poems she sent or recited on occasions she deemed especially fitting. And lastly, we have Supplementary 1 to 29. The following sections are marked as supplementary in certain manuscripts of the Pillow Book, not appearing in all of them, though they are in much the same style as the main part of the book. So in this, Say describes the practice of exorcism in these supplementary sections. Spirits were believed to cause illness, so a Buddhist priest would draw the spirit into a medium to relieve the suffering individual. Say disdain towards commoners in a religious setting is striking. She regards their presence as an unsavory disruption for her pity. Say tries to keep the book private, but it's become public knowledge despite her best intention. The Pillow Book ends with a possible explanation of the diary's origin. The courtier Korichika gave Empress Deshi a gift of a bundle of paper, which the Empress in turn gives to Sei. Sei begins filling the book with those things she finds delightful or impressive, never intending it to be seen by others, she claims. When Provincial Governor Chunifusa spots the book during a visit to Sei's home, he takes it with him despite her protest. That seems to have been the moment when this book first became known, Sei concludes. So that was the end of the summary of this book. So now we will be going to proceed to the main themes. So first we have court life versus common life. So Said views court life as superior to life as a commoner, with commoners being unworthy of being seen or heard. Her disdain reflects her own change in status, having moved from the country to the court. Court culture dictates that only specific officials are allowed to wear certain colors and fabrics, with their attire reflecting their quality. Commoners are only valuable insofar as they recognize the beauty of the court, reinforcing the latter's self-perception as beautiful. Next, we have poetry and social relationships. In Empress Deshi's court, knowledge of classical poetry was a defining aspect of social status and relationships. Courtiers avidly studied poetry collections like Kokensho and were skilled in composing poems on the spur of the moment. Poetry was a means of securing and maintaining one's place in court and a way to prove one's skills and cultural attainment. Poetry was also a mediator of important relationships between friends and lovers, with failure to respond to a poem reflecting poorly on the sender and potentially derailing a relationship. Poetry was not just a form of individual expression, but a cultural glue that reinforced relationships between individuals and society. So thirdly, we have aesthetic beauty, delight, and cultural tradition. So the Pillow Book is a collection of observations that emphasize the importance of appreciating small instances of delight with Japanese culture. Sei cultivates an okashic sensibility, which is an aesthetic experience of delight through her observations of daily life. She includes a list of closely observed phenomena or experiences that exhibit the quality of okashi, encouraging the reader to develop their own appreciation for these things. Says focus on okashi is informed by her immersion in poetry and cultural history, which disposes her to value certain examples of okashi. Scholars speculate that her collection was meant to serve as a source book for poets, instilling their own compositions with the okashi sensibility for others' enjoyment. And lastly, we have romance and official duty. So the book offers glimpses into the relationships between men and women in Empress Teshi's court. Romance in the court has a light-hearted and recreational aspect due to the official separation and distance between men and women. Say enjoys frequent nighttime visits from men, which seem to be a source of humor and doesn't carry heavy consequences for either party involved. Secret tries between courtiers carry a pleasant element of a risk that enhances the fun. Say is a cynical observer of relationships at court and perceives that deception and flattery abound in romantic relationships, with women carrying the burden of undesirable consequences. So now I have three questions here to test what have you learned about this discussion. So good luck guys. So that was the end of my discussion and I hope that you've learned something about it. And that's all. Thank you.